All right, let's jump right in. Today we're talking about something truly fundamental, some of the most important machines in the entire universe, the real engines of creation.
You've probably heard this quote, right? It paints this beautiful picture of nature just effortlessly existing. A lily just grows. It doesn't seem to have to work at it.
But here's the twist. Deep inside you, right now, there's a tiny, flower-shaped engine that is doing both. It's toiling and it's spinning, constantly.
So let's really get into this. We're talking about the engine of life itself. I mean, this tiny, tiny machine is what's powering every single thing you do, your every move, every single thought. So the big question has to be, how on earth does it actually work?
So let's meet the star of our show, H ATP synthase. Yeah, it's a mouthful, I know. But this little guy is the enzyme that cranks out most of the ATP in our bodies. And ATP is basically the energy currency for everything. And the coolest part? Just look at it. It has this three-part symmetry that honestly looks just like the petals of a flower.
Now, to really wrap your head around just how small this thing is, let's put it side by side with another biological motor. You can see our ATP synthase is just about 10 nanometers across. That's unbelievably small. And then you have the bacterial flagellar motor, which is like a giant next to it at 40 nanometers. But here's what's so wild. They run on the exact same fuel. It's something called the proton motive force, which is basically just a stream of protons flowing across a membrane.
Okay, so knowing this engine is there is one thing, but figuring out how it worked, that led to an idea that was, it was completely radical, a really controversial theory that honestly ended up changing everything. So let's set the scene. We're back in the mid-1970s. A biochemist, Paul Boyer, comes along and proposes something that just sounds, wild.
He called his theory rotational catalysis. And the idea was, it was exactly what it sounds like. He was saying that parts of this tiny enzyme weren't just acting like a motor, they were literally a motor. That parts of it were turning, spinning like a drive shaft, just to churn out ATP. And you can probably guess the reaction, right? Almost nobody believed him. I mean, a spinning protein? At the molecular scale? It sounded like something straight out of science fiction, not a biochemistry textbook.
But then, the hunt for clues was on. And little by little, the first hints started to show up, hints that this completely unbelievable idea might actually be right. And the first huge piece of the puzzle came from something that's a classic source of truth in biology, looking at the enzyme's actual three-dimensional crystal structure. And when they finally saw it, it was just stunning. I mean, look at this diagram from our source material. The structure looked, and I'm quoting here, every bit like a three-piston rotary motor. You could see the central part that looked just like a drive shaft, and the parts around it looked like an engine block. The similarity was just, you couldn't ignore it. But, a picture that looks like something isn't hard proof. To really truly convince everyone, they had to see it happen. They had to see the engine run. And this led to one of the most clever experiments you can imagine, one that would finally settle the debate.
All right, let's walk through this. It's called the no-G experiment, and it's brilliant in its simplicity. So, first step, they basically glued the motor part of the enzyme to a glass slide so it wouldn't move. Step 2, they attached this long fluorescent filament, think of it as a glowing propeller, to the part they thought was the spinning drive shaft. And then, step 3, they just added the fuel, ATP, and looked through a microscope to see what would happen.
And it worked. It was absolutely incredible. For the very first time, scientists were literally watching these tiny propellers spin round and round, driven by just a single molecule of ATP synthase. They were watching the engine of life turn. And they weren't moving slowly either. These little motors were spinning it up to 4 revolutions per second. That's 240 RPM from a single molecule. This was it. This was the undeniable proof. As Stephen Block, the author of our source article, puts it, nothing is quite so compelling as seeing rotation with one's own eyes. And that's exactly what this experiment gave the world. Compelling visual proof. So this incredible spinning motor, it's not some weird biological one-off. Turns out it's just one part of this whole universe of microscopic machines. The motors working inside every one of us. And this slide really helps show that variety. On the one hand, you've got the rotary motors like the ATP synthase we've been talking about, but your cells are also packed with linear motors. They're the ones that literally walk along these tiny highways in your cells, carrying cargo from one place to another.
And this is really just a taste of this whole family of molecular machines. You've got myosin, which is contracting your muscles right now. You've got kinesin and dynein, which are like the little delivery trucks inside your cells. Even RNA polymerase, the machine that reads your DNA, is a motor that moves along the strand. It's a whole toolkit of tiny, incredible engines.
So these are the amazing engines of creation that we know about, the ones science has managed to find and understand. And that just leaves us with this one big, fascinating question. What other incredible machines are still whirring away inside of us, just waiting to be discovered?